This is TWiT.
I'm not sure if you guys saw the video that they played. It was like the new commercial about the privacy, but it was really, I thought it was kind of a touching video. It just showed how much of your information really is out there. And I think when you stop and think how much stuff is on your phone, it's shocking. So I think for Apple to kind of step up and sort of make this move and show how important this is and really make an entire commercial and video dedicated to it, I think it's a pretty bold move.
I sense that this feels like a very slow move. It's a very, they're not scaring anyone, but they just keep on adding they just keep on tightening these little bolts very slowly. So it's kind of, they're kind of like when you put on a tire and you keep on going around and you just keep on tightening these bolts, very, very slowly so that
in
you
a
keep it
certain
all
order.
even.
Yeah.
But it's not, they're not just going, okay, we're going to turn the security all the way on, because there's a lot of places that they could go, and I think that, and I think that they're not tightening it so much that people go crazy. Yeah. But when you look at that trajectory, it feels like they could go, they could tighten this a lot. Like, for instance, I think that the email is good. I think basically allowing developers to have an anonymized relationship with their users where it's fixed. I know that I'm talking to that person, but I don't know who they are.
Yep.
And that anonymizing of the data is incredibly valuable, because you can do a lot of things that people won't trust you to do otherwise. And I think that and it does seem like they're going to make it harder and harder. Yeah, as I said, they're kind of boiling a frog, a security frog.
And this comes back to my point. People trust Apple to get this right. So when it comes to this privacy and keeping your data secure and respecting you as an individual and that sort of stuff, then Apple is building that trust that other institutions aren't. And it's very interesting. I think if Apple actually ratcheted up to maximum, like you said, it'd be interesting to see if they would actually provoke Facebook, Google, and others into a reaction. So if Apple became so private that the Secret Services weren't able to track people, or that Facebook started to lose valuable analytics data, or that Google wasn't able to do targeted advertising, they would provoke a reaction from those institutions.
Well, I think the concern is that they provoke a reaction from the government. Like less about the provoking reaction from Google and Facebook, but
they have provoked.
It's not just the government. You can't just keep blaming the government for everything. Jesus, Americans, you have to calm down.
No, I'm not.
It's business and government, right? And society. You have four estates, right? And you have society, you have the business community, and you have the government.
But the organization most trying to stop Apple from going down the security path is the FBI, not Google or Facebook. Google and Facebook aren't comfortable with it, but the ones that are talking about it in Washington all the time,
Google and Facebook aren't.
The ones that are passing laws in Australia are security. Are government agencies. That's the problem.
But the governments are talking about it in public, but Google and Facebook are making moves behind the scenes to bypass the privacy that Apple's putting in place constantly.
But that's a whack-a-mole.
I think
Facebook is also saying that they are going to encrypt WhatsApp end-to-end and make Zuckerberg is making all sorts of at least statements about how privacy is the future.
Or you say, Justine, what were you saying there?
Well, of course, Zuckerberg is going to say that.
Exactly.
It's Facebook.
I was going to say that too. Yeah.
Yeah, but for a lot of normal consumers, people like my parents and my mom, they don't want to have to be worrying. I go home and I make sure that I have, Face ID, I have all of their things secured and locked, because that's not something that a normal everyday person is going to be concerned about. But it is. What if you lose your phone? And I'm you didn't have a passcode on? Why not? Those simple things, everyone should be doing. And, for Apple to kind of make this video that is widely available to everyone, I think it's a good move. And it just makes normal everyday consumers a little bit more aware that privacy is a huge issue. Yes. You have so much information on that phone. Be careful.
And I was talking to my mom. My mother has a PC. She's very committed to it, and she's got all these viruses, and then she's got this stuff popping up all the time. And I'm like, "What are you doing with it?" Well, I'm doing email, and I'm doing this other. I'm like, just get an iPad. This wall will just go away. If it's a closed system.
I had the same problem with my brother. He just couldn't cope with the computer. I gave him an iPad, and it was all solved.
I have PCs. I have Linux. I have Androids. I have I have all this stuff, and I use them all every day. But I know what I should and shouldn't be doing with those things, and it's kind of they're powerful and they're valuable. But for my mom, it's kind of she just needs an iPad,
and that comes down to, so for me, same thing. All of my family uses phones because I know that the privacy and generally the security is good. Yeah. So I come back to my trust point. I trust Apple to get it mostly.
If you don't use password as the password.
Yeah.
You know, they like. And the best advice I got was, you know, I have, you know, my phone is, you know, get away from the 4-digit or 6-digit. This is our little PSA here for a second. Is think of a phrase that you remember from your childhood that no one would know, and use that phrase, and don't ever say it out loud to anyone.
Riding
ever,
my bike up the street. RM,
or whatever.
You know,
but just it doesn't have to have any special letters.
No, it's
just a long phrase. Like my phrase is 26. No, I'm not going to tell my phrase. My phrase is someone say shushing me. I'm going to say my phrase is Frank went to the market. No one's ever going to guess Frank went to the market. It's great, isn't it? Yeah. No, it is, but it's 26 characters long, you know, and it's not the alphabet, in case you're wondering. It just happens to be 26 characters. But the point is, the only time I get upset is like my battery goes out, and then now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to type this. You know, like, you know, and so it's, but it's a phrase that I'm always going to remember, and it's always, you know, going to be there. And the thing, and no one at 26 characters. No one.
Mine is my favorite one is to use when I'm creating a password to get into my password manager, is to use a phrase where it is really outrageous, something that you could never say out loud because you'd be in instant trouble, right? And so when you're sitting there going to yourself, I use the example of riding my bike up the street. You know, R-M-B T, and what you do is you use swear words or really bad words, and then you'll never say it out loud.
Yeah, there you go. There we go.
Oh my gosh, you're giving away all the secrets.
Yeah.
But those are the.
But that's hard too. But a lot of these security questions is like, where were you born? Well, I can Google it and I can figure out where you were born. What was your mother's maiden name? Well, everyone knows who my mom is, so let's look it up. So these questions are almost too simple. That the fact that like I can't actually use any of those.
Or they ask ones that are harder, but then I can't remember what they are because I can't remember what I said.
Know.
And so they're like, you know, who's your favorite this or what's your favorite that? And you're like,
you should take those as secondary passwords. I don't answer those questions. I have secondary passwords for those questions.